Hey there, welcome to Authentically Raw. I'm your host, Jamie Berris. Dr. Leslie Dobson, welcome to the Authentically Raw podcast. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. I just did Pilates, so I'm revved up.
Perfect. I'm going to go for a walk as soon as we're done. Actually, it's 62 degrees here. And in Michigan for being, February 21st, this is unheard of. And the sun's out. Like, we don't get the sun in Michigan all winter. So, but before I get into weather, a little bit of an introduction about you. You are a clinical and forensic psychologist, author of The Friends Cleanse, and a speaker. And I want to throw in one more thing. You've spent over 20 years in the assessment and treatment of mental health disorders and in individual and group therapy and criminal and civil law. That's a lot. I'm so impressed. And I am so excited for this conversation because I know it's going to go a million different places, but that's amazing. Wow. How did you get there? How did you get down that path?
Thank you. It feels like quite a lot in 41 years.
It is a lot. It's a huge.
I've always been an overachiever, so I was able to do a lot of different jobs and experiences at the same time. And so I think that really helped build my resume. But I got into psychology because I wanted to be a veterinarian. And it was one of those moments where the professor looks at you and says, look to your left, look to your right. In 6 months, neither of those people will be there because it's so difficult. And I thought to myself, well, there's no way in hell I'm going to be here. I mean, organic chemistry was so difficult for me. And then I started going to a general psychology course, and I was fascinated that I could actually have a job that was how I already thought and how I already perceived the world.
Yeah. Fascinating. Well, you took it very far. I mean, just the part of the forensic psychologist, tell me exactly what that is.
Sure. So we have a lot of different roles. We can work in treatment, or we can work in assessment. We can testify in court. They work up into politics. So my role has always been assessing the violence of people who are incarcerated or hospitalized for mental illness and violent felonies. And I would testify in court to the likeliness that they would recidivate or do the crime again when they got out. And then I kind of moved past that once I had my kids, because I felt like it was too dangerous. And I moved into civil litigation. So now it's more personal injury lawsuits. And a lot of them are people who have been raped or are being accused of rape. And so I will test them with a variety of psychological assessments to see if they are basically telling the truth.
Wow. So you're good at reading people. I would think, right? And
I have a passion. Yeah.
You would have to be, but these tests to see if people are even just good to go back out in society, like what does that even look like? And this is leading down to the book, or leading up to the book that you've written on how to, the cleansing of your friends, yes, I'm interested in that. But to start right out, the type of person, did you think that are they all like psychopaths? Are they just, mentally and emotionally, were they mentally and emotionally abused? What type of person out there are they? And how do you determine when someone is healthy enough to be in society?
So there's the full range, right? We have people who, as children, were displaying symptoms consistent with psychopathy, dangerous behaviors. And then we have people who were raised in really bad areas and their street smarts, that's just how they got by. That's how they learned. And a lot of it leads to criminal convictions. But what we would do is sit down with them and give them a variety of testing. So we would do interviews, which are kind of subjective. We would do structured interviews like the psychopathy questionnaire. So we can really look at the behavioral, antisocial, impulsivity piece, and we can look at the emotional, psychological, and manipulation capacity. And then we would do these extensive record reviews. I mean, they would take days and days and days, handwritten notes, anything we could get our hands on. We would talk to victims, we would talk to family. And then the biggest thing was that we would talk to them. We would sit for hours and interview them and get to know them and look at how they engaged in treatments. And after a while, I could really look into a crowd and kind of say, okay, you'd commit that crime. You'd commit that crime. I can see you doing that.
Yeah.
And so I gained that confidence through my experience.
Yeah. That has to almost be a little frightening, I would think.
Yeah.
In every situation.
I mean, it's less fun to live life with no ignorance.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. So how did all of this, because you have a book that is called The Friends Cleanse. So how did this book transpire?
So I've always been really good at working with very, very dangerous, difficult people and tolerating the stories and not taking them home with me. I've never been one to have nightmares. I can really just leave it in the work facility and go home and be happy. And not a lot of psychologists can do that. It's a very difficult thing to maneuver. So what I noticed was that I had that capacity. And then when COVID hit, what I noticed was that my clients were happier without having to be forced into these relationships with people. And so I combined these two perspectives on why do we need this external permission to stay away from toxic people? And that's where the book came from. And I did it too. I thought, wow, I am around people who drain me and I don't like them. And the hair on the back of my neck is standing up and I'm ignoring all the red flags. And why? Because if it were COVID, I would use that as an excuse. Why can't it be internalized? Yeah. So that's where the book came from. So we can use the book to journal who our friends are, title them, and then there's this interactive game on the website where you can plop them down on this sphere and see how they're draining your energy.
Wow. And that's exactly, and I know you use the term, was it energy vampires? And that, I love that term because it's so true. I think a simple question that we can ask ourselves in any relationship, but friendships, whatever, is this person, rejuvenate me or, just suck the life out of me? I mean, do I feel energized or completely depleted when I'm in their presence or after being in their presence? And how many people that we tolerate and we put up with that completely suck the energy and the life out of us, make us feel, ashamed or just blah, and we tolerate it and put up with it. Why? Like you said, all the red flags are there, the hair is standing up, and we just keep showing up.
And in the book, I talk a little bit about attachment styles. It's not meant to be this big psychoeducational book, but I think attachment is huge because we do tend to anxiously attach to people. We want to make sure we have friends around, and the thought of pushing friends away and being friendless for a while is terrifying. Right. But when you do that, you are actually, I hate to use the trending word, but you're manifesting more energy and friendships coming towards you that are meaningful and that are like you, that fit with you.
Right. Yeah, because you do morph and turn into the people that you spend the most time with. And if you're not going to give yourself the permission to get distance, from those people, there you're going to stay and you're going to attract more of those same people in.
Yes.
I mean, truly. So was there any, you wrote the book over COVID? Is that correct?
I've had the ideas, but I wrote the book probably over the past year. Right. Because I got the fun idea for the online sphere and I thought, we need something to go along with it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. When you said about the attachment styles too, it does make me think of how it's like just with the anxious attachment style. And so many of the people that have that attachment style, they just even feel bad for not being friends with certain people. They've been in my life for decades. It's a childhood friend or it's a it's a parent of my child's friend, or, you know, they're in the school, we're all in the same group, so I just have to. And I think COVID was a really clean break for so many people. But now that the years have passed and we're back out there, I love, you know, like even through your book, you can take that time to really assess and be aware, because I think a lot of people, I mean, we ignore the red flags, but at the same time aren't truly aware of how damaging, you know, any relationship is when you're just sitting there tolerating for whatever reason. But a friendship is, I mean, you have a choice. You can't always, you know, just leave the office because there's someone in there that is not good for you and toxic, you know, or there's family members. There's certain people we have to tolerate to an extent, but our friends, no, I mean, they should be the people pulling out the best in us, empowering us, you know, just cheering us on, and we support each other and they're fun. And why would we really, truly though, why do so many women put up with it's like abuse, pretty much. It's like mental and emotional abuse. And because I've been there. I don't, first I'll maybe have an answer for that. Why do women do that? Do you have any conclusions?
I think it really changes depending on where we are in life. So I'm in kind of the elementary school life with my young kids, and I've talked to a lot of women who they're in the high school life, the college life with their children, or they don't have children. And we get so stuck in our place in life. I mean, from an early age, I can remember saying, I don't want to be friends with you just because we go to the same high school.
Yeah.
And I've always had that desire in me to say there's more, like, I'm not settling. I'm not settling. And I was always pressed. And maybe it's my age and the age of my parents, but I was always pressed to just settle and to stop finding my voice and my empowerment. And when I started listening to that is when I started surrounding myself with people who lift me up when I'm not in the room, you know, who celebrate my accomplishments, and I do the same for them.
Right.
But it's hard to find those people. It's really scary, and it's super disruptive to our life when we set boundaries. There's a lot of retaliation.
Yeah, definitely. But if we don't open up that space to invite new people in. And really, I feel like once you really put yourself out there and you can connect with even just one person that really lights you up and celebrate, you know, you both celebrate each other and you've got each other's back, it opens up a lot of doors, because they probably have at least one person, and then that person has one person. And before you know it, it's like, wow, they're just, people are showing up, you know, or your energy that you're giving out is different too. I really think, and you just attract that type of person. You mentioned about your kids being in elementary, and so I have two in college right now, one in middle and one in elementary. So we got quite the spread. And I will say, it just, my mind went like this. I thought of a couple different instances. The first one was when I had some, you know, the high school group of girlfriends, and there was one girl that was very narcissistic. And I had no idea what that meant back then. I just thought she's gossipy, she's mean, she talks about us all behind her back, she pits us all against each other. You know, I didn't know oh, that's triangulation. Oh, this is enmeshment. Oh, this is narcissism. I had no idea what that stuff was back then. And I, being probably that, you know, oh, I'm just trying to be nice. You know, you mess her up, or, you know, on their bad side, and then you're like ousted from the group. It's all that kind of that high school stuff. It wasn't until I was in my mid-30s when I finally said, this is enough. And it was because one other girlfriend in the group said, this is enough, I'm out. And I'm like, oh good, I saw my exit door, and I'm like, take me with you. But what a learning lesson. I just think, how many decades did I go through that? And then when you make a clean break, it's just, wow, just like that. But when my oldest two were in elementary school, same thing. It's like there's always going to be someone that's difficult. And sometimes, you know, it's, what can I do just to get through these couple of years until we're in different schools, or, you know, my kid's in a different grade, but if you don't even have the knowledge and awareness of what's going on, of that person that's trying to manipulate and control and, pit people against each other. And, your loss is their win. And if you don't have that awareness, it can be so destructive to self. I mean, I can remember being in tears when one of my older two was in elementary over a very narcissistic mom. And it was a tiny, tiny school. I had to I'm like 5th grade. I had to get through it, but in tears for years. What do you do? Like, what do you do in that situation?
I've been in that situation before too. And it's so difficult, but I think what you said is so true, is you have to strategically navigate how you're going to get through it, especially if there's a time frame. Yeah. So you can interpersonally show up, you can plan ahead, right? I'm not going to be in the PTA, or I'm going to go to events and I'm going to have my out, or I'm going to have my wingman. I'm going to have a time limit. Play dates are going to be where parents aren't going to gather.
Yeah.
Like the art studios where the kids go in and there's no room for the parents, or, you navigate it in that way. So you've got like that way to have the boundary, but then you can also be more forceful, right? If we get to the level of somebody being belittling or demoralizing or toxic, then, we need to have permission to say, hey, I don't want you in my life. I'm worth more than this. You're not going to cut me down.
Yeah. I love that you said that, because I feel so many of us don't give ourselves that permission, because that's just not how we were raised. We've been conditioned to, oh, that's mean, but yeah, we'll take that, which is so ridiculous. I mean, I can't even remember in high school, it's, the kids in when my kids were in high school, a couple of them, just sporting events or things like that. I mean, it can get nasty in the bleachers and on the sidelines and things. And, there'll be groups of people, and it's a constant, you think you get through that stuff when you are in high school, but then when your kids are there, it's like, oh, here we go again. But now I have some tools, hopefully, to recognize some things, which leads me to, with all of your background, what are some big red flags and signs that from the get-go, like right when you first start to meet people, that you see, whether they're manipulative or toxic, or what stands out for you?
I think speed stands out a lot. If people are urgently trying to build that relationship with you and they aren't giving you that time, if you're hesitating to say, let me think about it. I think there are these cues we miss in people because they're glomming on to us so quickly that we don't really have a chance to see them. And then over time, we start to see these moments in them, and it's very hard for us to pull away because the relationship has already been, that foundation has been laid. So trusting our intuition that if somebody comes on fast and strong, we need to slow it down. And if they're not okay with that, then they can fuck off.
Right.
Also, that trusting of red flags, right? Like, I've had people in my life who they made me feel crappy after I was around them. And I thought, why? And they were envious. They were taking digs. They always set me up in a way where I felt smaller rather than equal.
Mm-hmm. Totally. And I think that envious part. So I have a I distinguish between jealousy and envy in this way, because I don't necessarily think jealousy is a bad thing. I think jealousy is something like, ooh, I love that about her. How can I, be inspired by her to do better, or, that sort of thing. So I try to look at jealousy as that way, like it ignites something in me, and, oh, I want to accomplish that too. Or, and you can use that person to help you better yourself. Whereas envy, I look at it as, like I think I said previously, it's, your win is my loss, or your loss is my win sort of person. And I think just being aware of that. And I think that is something we can pick up really quickly on just the subtle remarks that people will say. And I mean, I hate to say it, but men do this too, but women are terrible at it. I mean, it could just be, it's that shaming, the little passive aggressive, sideways shaming remarks of, so-and-so's kid does this, but my kids, never do that. But yet they want to point out what so-and-so's kids are doing, like really, so that everybody, knows the dirt, to make themselves, look better. Or, they're happy about when other people are struggling and things like that. Or I listened to another podcast that you were in, and you mentioned the fact, I wrote this down because I thought this was super interesting. You had lost 150 pounds. And with that 150 pounds, you also lost friends. And I thought, well, isn't that typical? Because suddenly you had some friends, in quotes, right, that suddenly felt threatened, and were envious, and then poof. And
Yes.
I think that's a perfect example. Tell me about that.
Yes, and that's happened a few times in my life, right? And it happens in all of our lives as we struggle with our health or pregnancy, IVF. But most recently it happened, and it really felt like as I got thinner and healthier and happier, the jabs increased. The spiteful statements, the jealousy, that envy you described increased. And what I found was that I think some people enjoyed that I was the underdog because it made them bigger. And when we became on level ground, or maybe I became better because I was working so hard on myself, they felt smaller and they didn't have the capacity emotionally to be around it. And I never changed in my personality and my love for everyone. Like, I give everything to everyone, and I'm a ride or die type of friend. I never changed. What changed was my weight and my health and my happiness.
Right. And I think that's a lot of it. I mean, it's such a simple word of happiness, but when people are unhappy and they see you happy, sometimes it really just strikes that chord, and they want you to be unhappy just like they are. So it's whatever it takes to pull you back down. I mean, it is the old quote, misery loves company. But oh my goodness, it made me think of a friend of I have talked about this a lot, is how sometimes that will, when other people devalue us in that way. So all of a sudden, they think that the playing field is not equal anymore, or you're not less than them, you're above in some way, shape, or form, whether it's achievements, social status, financial status, kids, whatever it could be, your body, anything. And all of a sudden, they're devaluing you. And a friend of mine, we've talked about this a lot because we both actually caught ourselves devaluing ourselves to avoid the shame, the envy, the hate, whatever you want to call it, being thrown at you. Because if they're doing it to you, chances are they're talking the same stuff to other people too. And that's hurtful. And it's our natural instinct. I want to defend myself against this. And we both admitted, like, we have devalued, you don't share things, or you try to not act so happy, or, this accomplishment, you dumb it down, or, oh, it's no big deal. And you hide things and you keep secrets. And do you see that? Did you ever do that? I mean, I'm getting a lot better on that now that I'm aware of it. I think no, because if you're going to do that to me, you're not worth being my friend anyway. I don't really care anymore. But I will admit, for decades, I did. I would really devalue myself because I couldn't stand the pain. Yeah. But I would tolerate the person. It's like you want to beat your head.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, for me, it started as a young kid. I was always quick-witted and outspoken, and people found it threatening. And I was perceived as the black sheep of the family. And when there was somebody to blame, the blame would go on me because I could tolerate it.
Yeah.
And that turned into me, like you said, dumbing down, minimizing my strengths and my capacity and my voice. And until I moved away from my family unit and experienced other parts of the world and different cultures, and those work relationships too, I started to realize, wow, I have earned my place in this world. And if somebody makes me feel other or less than, then that says everything about them and nothing about me.
Yeah, exactly. And it's hard too, because it does take time to get to that place to really put those boundaries up. And this same friend, her wise words that she spoke to me probably 10 years ago that I repeat because it's just so simple is, it's theirs. It's theirs. And I will say that because in the moment when it's happening, just shame in general, when someone is like pushing that on you, devaluing you, belittling, whatever they're doing, just in the moment now to be able to look at them and, say to myself, oh yeah, I know what this is. You're shaming me. It's yours. This is all you. It's a reflection on you. I'm not absorbing it. I'm not going there. But if you don't have that, I think of just, growing up, that if kids don't have that skill, and then, you go into high school, it's even worse, college, and you get into the workforce, that's everywhere. All genders, that's everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, and I teach this to my daughter, she's 7, but I tell her all the time, if you can't find your words, then find a way to show up in the conversation regardless. And what she likes to say is, if she's feeling overwhelmed by someone, she says, "You're a lot."
I love it.
And that's been her way to be like, you're a lot. And it gives her this moment to kind of collect her thoughts.
Yeah.
And I've even said that to people, to strangers, "You're a lot." And I need a minute to figure out what the hell's going on.
Yeah. I like that. That's a good one, because I have actually resorted to a few phrases with certain people that are a lot. It's the wow or okay. Because then you're giving them nothing, right? It's wow, okay. It really does, which it does lead me to, and I know I threw these words out there in the beginning about like manipulation and narcissism and the triangulation, because I think especially in friendships, how much triangulation goes on, and women don't really understand what triangulation is. And I think that's one of those things that's a tough one, because especially if you're dealing with a narcissist, to defend yourself really sometimes is just, it's pointless. And with the triangulation, I think it gets tough because you don't know who to trust. And everything just gets so muddy. And then you start looking sometimes at an entire friend group, and everyone is so confused. And then what? No one wants to wipe out and, cleanse their entire, every friend they have. But if those circles are intermixed, or those people are intermixed in the circle, that can get really, really tricky. And I don't throw around, the narcissism and things like that lightly, because I know it is out there quite a bit. But I've had experience, I think, most people have with the grandiose type. Those are easier to point out. But the covert narcissist, especially women in a friendship group, is so toxic. Do you have any words on that?
What I found, so again, my experience is so, severe when it comes to psychopaths and narcissism. But even in those groups, what I found was they couldn't maintain the triangulation in group settings, right? So a narcissistic person they can't be level with you because it's dangerous. If they're level with you, then anything could make them fall. And if they fall, they're in that narcissistic wound where the pain is insufferable to them. So they always need to have a buddy with them. And the buddy might be this evidence that they're going to use to manipulate you, or to say that you did something when you were drunk and you don't remember, or I know a friend that knows a friend that knows you. They're always going to have something to hold over you to make them feel bigger and prevent them from falling. But that's very difficult to do when you're in a group setting. So I always suggest to my clients, if they want to confront somebody who is narcissistic or who is hurting a lot of the people in the group, the friends, then do it all together. Get on the same page. You can have group therapy with your friend group, but don't allow the conversations to be one-on-one consecutively, because the narcissistic person will not be the same with each person.
No. Yeah, they wear many masks. That's for sure. That's for sure. Yeah. So in your book, do you have certain like little tidbits to, really remain though? I mean, and a lot of it I think is just us, that having that strong relationship with ourselves, and then we will develop just naturally, stronger relationships with other people. But, I mean, some people just, they really struggle, where do I find good friends? How do I do this? And, what has worked for you?
Finding my own happiness has led me to really wonderful people. So, I always felt like exercise was important, but the gym felt forced to me. And when I started doing Pilates, I realized that me and the other women, we weren't completely drained, but we were challenged, and we still wanted to talk after class.
Yeah.
And I loved that started to build relationships for me there. I looked forward to going to the classes and seeing who was in the class with me. But for me, it all starts with, am I doing something that feels true to myself? And then if I'm showing up as myself and I get to meet other people, other friends, then I'm all for it. And it allows an authentic and transparent friendship communication to start.
Yeah, definitely. And because I think friendships, they are so important at, every stage of our lives. And I do think that we do need to give ourselves the freedom to allow friendships to fizzle or fade, because we all should be growing and evolving and changing throughout lives. And it's not that there is a falling out. It's just, you can't, if you have the exact same friends that you've had since you're little, for the rest of your life, you can't tell me that seems kind of stagnant. Like, and it's okay to have friends, certain friends come and go in different seasons, whether, just where you are in your life, wherever you are in your career or with your family, just even with your religion or your exercise. There's so many different ways that we can get out there. And I think the most important thing to remember is, where am I at right now, and who can meet me where I am right now? And these are a gift. Friendships shouldn't be life sentences or, like you said, like draining. And I don't think we have to be so hard on ourselves and, with friends. And I think a lot of us, I see it. I think a lot of women are.
Yes. And I also really like the idea of bookmarking a friendship. If this isn't the time, but there is a connection, then take a break and come back when your energy is there, or maybe when that friend is more available, or that friend has stopped being around people you dislike or that disrespect her, right? Because maybe she's in friendships that you don't think are good for her, but she's not ready to listen yet. So I do agree with really closing the chapter on toxic people. But if you still like someone and there's not a fit, then we can navigate that too, right? The key is to step back and really reflect on who is in my life. What do I want my life to look like? What's happening with my family? What's happening with my job? It all takes so much energy for us to exist and live in this world. And we want to be able to get through the week with joy. For me, it's not time, maybe interest to play with my 2-year-old, even though his games are so boring, but can I fake it at the end of the week? Yeah, I need to be able to do that at least.
Right. And that's the thing too. And speaking of like faking it, and that's the thing, I think we have to give ourselves that permission, like, because there are friendships where it's just so fake and people can see it from the outside. You feel it. And why are we doing this? Why are we playing the charade? And am I just going to be the one to finally, I'm done faking it. Let's move on, go with grace. And because there's people everywhere that, give you so much more life that you can just be your authentic self around. And I think that is huge. That is key. If you can't be really, truly who you are, I mean, there's almost, to me, it's not even about red flags, about other people. That is the green flag for us. Because I think we need, focus on some green flags here of what type of person do I gravitate towards, and and why? Because who am I? Am I able just to be my quirky self around them? Can I, do I need this type of conversation? Can I open up? Is this person safe? I think that's a big one too, is the safety of being able to trust, have that one or two that you really can be deep with and trust them, that what you say stays with them. It's not going to be used against you in some, sideways comment later, and that doesn't have to be a big circle. That's not a lot of people. It's almost like there's these tiers of friendships.
Yes.
And we keep a couple close, and then, there's like these, it's almost in waves, I think, up, and that's healthy. I do have a question. So back to the forensic, when you and this is just curiosity. This has nothing to do with friends, but when you are, I guess the word is interviewing them. Maybe it's not the right word. Profiling, is that maybe a better?
Evaluating, assessing, it doesn't matter.
Because when I was looking through all of your stuff, it does make me think, since we were talking about kids in school and things like that. And I was snooping around on your Instagram, and there was some stuff on there, like about school shootings, things like that. And as a parent, or just even going anywhere myself, I don't want to say I'm like so hyper vigilant and I'm trying to read the room and like, who's this, who's that? But I think we do need a certain level of awareness now, in our world. And do you have any just general tips or rules that you live by of things to be aware of in certain people, that it's like, okay?
Yeah, the first rule I live by is I'm going to trust my intuition and my gut. And if I'm wrong, I can apologize later. Mm-hmm. But I don't care. If I'm feeling like somebody is following me in a parking lot, I'm going to make noise and turn around and let it be known that I am aware. And if it was just a guy walking to his car, I don't care. So there's a level of, I'm not going to feel sorry for focusing on my safety. Mm-hmm. But I am always very aware of people who want things from me. Mm-hmm. So if they don't feel like they're genuinely connecting to be kind, and that they have an alternative motive, I'm very vigilant in those situations, especially when it comes to people who harm children. I take my kids to the park, and I'm very aware of every single person who's there, everyone who's a mile away. I'm looking at who could possibly have eyes on the kids, and not just my kids, all the kids at the playgrounds. Mm-hmm. Are they with another child? Are they alone? Does their attire look like everyone else's? So constantly assessing the safety of the individuals around us, ourselves, and the environment.
Yes.
And that may take me out of the moment more, but I also don't care. I can be more of myself when I'm in safer settings.
Yeah. Yeah. Just, and that awareness. And like you said, just pay attention to your gut. Cause I think most of us get that feeling, but we ignore it. And I've definitely had that feeling before, or just, when I'm out running or things like that, you pass someone, and I mean, you pass a million people, and then all of a sudden you pass one and you're like, yeah, something's off. And yeah, to listen and pay attention to it.
I think that feeling, and as women, I think we struggle. Like, that feeling comes up, and it might not come up with words right away, but it's there because your body or your mind knows. It is reminding you that something in your environment is triggering a red flag in you. So that feeling is so important to acknowledge. And then later you will probably remember or find the words to know where that feeling came from. But in the moment, get the hell to safety. And we don't do that enough for ourselves. We've learned over time and culture, and especially in America, we've learned over time to just white knuckle through it and ignore it. And that we're dramatic, or, we're too much to handle. Well, I say, I don't care.
And I think a lot of people are just afraid of offending other people.
Very much.
Because there is a lot of that out. I mean, and yeah, especially now, I think that just over the last few years, it's like the phrase, if you're not for me, you're against me, kind of pops up. And I think people are scared to really, say things because, yeah, that it is. I mean, I feel that sometimes.
Yeah. And I am for me, and I am for my husband and my kids. And then I will try to not be offensive after that.
Right. Exactly. No, it's just great advice. Like, I love that you said, I mean, if you're offensive, then you can apologize, after the fact. But I mean, our safety is number one. No, definitely. Well, Leslie, where can people find you, and where's your book?
So my website's drlesliedobson.com. My Instagram is drleslie.com, TikTok, drleslie.com.
Yeah.
I
checked out Instagram. You got great little clips on there. So I highly recommend that. Everybody, just little clips on all different things. It's great. Loved it.
Yes, I'm having so much fun with the comments and the feedback, and I love hearing about people's stories, and then everybody starts to share stories with each other and support each other. And I honestly don't delete comments. There aren't a lot of negative comments. It's been a great place to breed meaningful conversation.
Yeah. It's information and awareness, if I could sum it up. And it's great. I actually I had a kid home sick today, and the one about the January, was it in Ohio, that there was probably prevented a school shooting or something. And I showed him that, and I said, if you ever hear of anything, or, people are even just joking or whatever, always tell me and Dad. And so we could call the police, because this was probably going to happen. And, things like this can be prevented. And, you forget sometimes to have those conversations with your kids, or just friends, or just anybody, because we just think, I don't know what we think, but I mean, that's truly what it is. What do we think? We have to start thinking, and we have to pay attention, for sure.
We get comfortable. And I think because I testify, and I know that attorneys are going to cut me down left and right and find any hole they can, I feel like I'm always studying, and I'm always ready. And if I can bring that to a social media platform and be the reminder for people, then that's a great, I think, avenue for the stress that I'm undertaking while I testify. And it's a really good reminder of, oh, wait, we do need to look at all of these things. We do need to talk to our kids about private parts. We need to talk to them about what is good touch, what is bad touch. We need to talk to them about if they're is an emergency in the mall. How do you get out? An earthquake's way different than fleeing from an active shooter. So all these conversations, that's why I love this. I love Instagram. I love having a platform to do it.
And it's funny, it just made me think of how often, because I have fallen in this trap sometimes too. And it's a huge no-no, but sometimes we avoid these conversations because we think, oh, if we talk about it, then, it's going to happen. And that is so not true. No one likes to talk about the tragic things of this could happen or that could happen. And, we're not trying to instill fear in our kids. It's awareness if something does happen. I mean, the drills that they go through in school, they're very aware of the possibilities of things that can happen. But yeah, I would want to have them prepared, and and that's why I like yours. So I don't feel like I have to go into in depth. You can just show them things like, hey, and then it sparks conversation and that awareness. So keep doing it. I loved it. And I just got on there and I'm like, oh, I could spend some time here. So yeah, absolutely. So yes, your website and your book, I presume is pretty much everywhere on Amazon. And
yeah, I think Amazon is the easiest. There's a Kindle. It's on my website too, but Amazon is so easy. Same day delivery.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And I think, friendships are important. And I just love, because there's not a lot of books that are just really geared towards like how to have healthy relationships within your friendship. So I just love that, because it's a huge important piece of our life. So absolutely fascinating.
Right. We only get one life, and we need to make sure we are living it to the best of our ability and not ignoring our needs.
Exactly. There are chosen people, right? So choose wisely, right? It's such a reflection on ourselves too. I always kind of remember that, your friends are a reflection on yourself. It's, it's easy. Don't you feel like, as a parent, you tell your kids these things, and when you were growing up, your parents tell you, this, be careful who you hang out with and all this and that. And then all of a sudden, where does that go when we become adults? Sometimes we lose that. And here we are hanging out with the wrong crowd or the mean girl, or it's like, we have to remind ourselves, go back and parent ourselves a little bit like, hey, careful who you hang out with. It shows a lot about who we are and our character too. So definitely. But thank you, Leslie, for this conversation. I loved it.
Thanks for taking the time to talk to me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for listening to Authentically Raw. I'd love to hear from you. Shoot me an email, jamie@jamieberris.com, and let me know what episodes resonate with you and why. Are you a people pleaser? If so, I need your help. Please. I'm writing a book about people pleasing, titled The People Pleaser's Guide to Pissing People Off, to improve your relationships, especially the one you have with yourself. And I'm looking for personal stories of how people pleasing has impacted your life, or sucked the life out of you. Maybe people pleasing has held you back, caused you to feel resent, regret, anger, powerlessness, or just plain exhaustion. Let me know how it's impacted your life. Who knows, maybe your story will inspire my writing and grace the pages in some shape or form in this handy-dandy little guide. Also, if you enjoy the Authentically Raw content, please support the show by following and leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. Simply scroll down through the episodes and you will see where to do so. Want to learn more about life coaching? Head over to my website, jamieberris.com, and check it out. You can also follow me on social media at Jamie Berris for lots of inspiration and empowerment. One last thing, I'm rooting for you. Be real, be raw, be authentic.